you doing?
Well, how are you?
Good. When I didn't see Sharon here, I thought perhaps there might be technical issues. So,
Oh, is she joining us today?
yes, she will be here shortly.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so how's it been since Tuesday?
Good. Yeah, just a lot of stuff kind of percolating. Sitting with that whole experience of just kind of like, oh, well, like, what would I like? It was just this really visceral experience of what I really appreciate in terms of being a human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, like, oh, well, what would I miss about this place? What would I be saying goodbye to? And it was really fascinating to see kind of like, and especially doing it in such a stream of consciousness way, not having to be like in this really analytical, oh, I need to make a, and that was the first thing that happened. Oh, this person, that person, that person. But when you shifted us kind of into that stream of consciousness, it allowed for kind of like this really genuine experience of all of the things that are moving through me. So yeah, I super
yeah,
appreciated that.
yeah. It's a really helpful exercise. Welcome, Sharon. Um, and it is. It also puts us in touch with the softness and the tenderness of the goodbye part. It can call up sitting with what's uncomfortable. And that's so important for life to be able to have that skill
Mhm.
to say, um, yeah, this, I don't like how this feels at all. And our first reaction is to distract. Let me throw myself into work. Let me eat a cookie. Let me do, I mean, let me, put that ugly feeling away. But when we, that's what that whole thing about bringing the fear closer, welcoming it into the long wooden table in the cottage of the self is about sitting with and bringing all of that to us. So that first exercise is like a deep dive into um sitting with some shit that might be hard to sit with. So I know for myself, the in doing death work, uh, and well, in doing death work, that was a big thing for me. So when I did that exercise a few years ago, uh, the tears and as I'm writing, like I can't see. My thing is, I have a fear of lasts. Like I do, I'm obsessed with lasts. The last time that I'll see this, and I'm hypersensitive to lasts. So in doing death work, that's what brought it up. But then I realized, oh, this is a great lesson for life work to figure out what is it about me that wants to hold and retain, and why do lasts feel so bitter, you know except for the good ones, like this is the last time I ever have to take this class, or this is the last time I ever have to go to the DMV or whatever it is.
Right,
But
write an exam.
right, oh exactly, right. Grad school, so much fun,
Yeah.
such fun. um but to be able to sit with that discomfort, like for me it's like fiberglass under my skin. It's like, oh, I just can't stand. And then and I have a son who is 14, so the last day I drove him to middle school, and I'm pulling away and watching his last approach to the middle school before next year we'll be going to the high school. And I was like, stop it, you're going to drive into a tree, stop. But
Meanwhile, I'm pushing them out the car and I'm
right.
not even looking in the rear view mirror. Woohoo!
Exactly. right? So all of these things, that's the whole point of, and we'll get deeper and deeper into this as the course goes on, but that that memento mori practice of facing that the impermanence helps us to face it while we're here. It makes our life much richer, you know. Um, and then the deep psychological stuff too, self-inquiry about where did that come from, that fear in me. So I'm just talking about the only thing I can refer to at this point, but where did that fear come from in me? Where did I start to have an aversion to the lasts of life? So that's why that great exercise, saying goodbye to things, actually ends up bringing them closer, I think, is to your point. Sharon, you're muted, huh?
Oh, you're muted, Mama. Bottom of your screen, left-hand
Got it.
side.
Hello, hello,
Oh, there you are.
hello.
Yes, what are you going to say?
There I am. Yeah. Well, that's interesting because really emotional. You're talking about the lasts, brought up a specific last of mine from many, many years ago. And as you were talking, I thought, what about that last makes me hold on to it? And I realized, and this goes with the memento mori thing a little bit, I realized that the implicit false view of lasts is that there will never be any more. And then I'm the laughing crying face here, the Italian laughing
Yes.
crying face, because the joke is there's always more. And I did a whole bunch of searching about memento mori things, and I learned about mo memento viv, viv, not
Vivre.
vivace, vivra.
Mm-hmm.
So going together. And I was looking for symbols that I wanted to use, and I came across the little minute minders, the little egg minders that 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 and then when I got into that, I discovered that I was into a place where um people were putting their ashes into those sorts of small thing of loved ones and so on. And I thought, no, I don't want to go there. But what I realized, the underlying thing was when you get to the end of that minute, you turn it over and there's more. There are infinitely more minutes, and there are infinitely more treacherous experiences awaiting us if we can focus.
Mm.
Thank you for that, because that experience has been a deep, deep sadness for so many years.
Mm.
And
Mm.
you've allowed me to sort of untether it.
Well, you took it and ran with it, Sharon. So good for you. You know, these things get presented, but doing that extra, making that extra step and making that connection is is wonderful. Yeah. And
Amazing,
that's
amazing.
such a great point too, you know. Um, and as both of you as mothers, there are those moments that you just don't get back. And a lot of people focus on that, focus on you'll never have this time again. But to your point, not this time, but you'll have more time, different time, right? And
Yeah.
then in the bigger picture, multiples of times that will go. Well, we're going to talk about that on Tuesday. Yeah, go ahead,
Well,
Lerna.
I just, as you're talking about that, what I've realized is, I had, as as we were having to leave the New Jersey house, we had to get it ready for sale, which meant I had to pull apart a room I had created for the girls as like a playroom, but always in the back of my mind, it was this will be a nursery. And so um, I had this really powerful experience, and it was so helpful that I'd had those years of preparation with you, of you kind of like sitting by my side as I experienced different emotional things, teaching me how to sit with emotion and be okay with it and that it would move through. And so as I was going through this process of stripping, it was such a material, physical process of literally physically removing this room and all of the kind of streams of the dreams that had lived within that space that didn't come, that did come. And so I had that experience. And then what's happened more recently is that shifting of realizing, okay, the kids are now getting into an age where they're all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, well, maybe I didn't get to have that experience of being a parent in this way. But like, when you can make peace with that whole piece, I looked over here and it's like the flipping, and I'm like, oh, but wait, there's grandchildren up here.
Mhm.
And that will be a similar but different experience. And so it's really beautiful how that's just kind of, I see how that cycles through. And if I can sit with the reality of what this is, everything it is and everything it isn't, and move through it, I don't get stuck in like what Mum was talking about. I don't get stuck in kind of like that Groundhog Day of reliving that painful experience and can't even open my eyes to what is coming down the pipe toward me.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
make
That's
sense?
yeah. Yeah. 100%. Because you're literally and figuratively flipping your view,
Yeah.
flipping
Yeah.
the hourglass and flipping the perspective, and look how full, when something has
Yeah.
drained, look how full it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And expanding to all of up here. I almost feel like how I used to be was I was looking down, right? So I'm looking down at what's exactly in front of me and what's behind me that I haven't processed. And because I have to keep ruminating about this painful thing right here. I can't look up because it's all there already, but I
Mhm.
can't look up and see it and take it in because I'm so focused on being in what was over there
Right.
and the
Right.
pain of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
that's the whole allowing space for it, and sitting with it, and not distracting yourself from it, right?
Yeah.
So that you can say, oh, okay, there's, yeah, we get the tunnel vision, right? We're only seeing the thing that we don't have, that we want, and we're not seeing the the whole of the thing. And this works in two directions, right? Sometimes uh we only see the good, and we forget that there, so like you liken it to like a piece of fruit, like a peach. And you see this beautiful peach. I just see all the good, but you forget that on the other side, or you ignoring, there's this big bruise on the other side of it. So you're like, oh, I have to remember that there, not, this wasn't like in, let's say, in an unhealthy relationship, you're focusing on, oh, I wish that hadn't ended because it was all so good, but it wasn't. It really
Yeah.
wasn't. Rotten fruit is what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the reverse as well, when we're focused only on the bruise, we forget that there's a whole other side of the fruit that's delicious, and we can just exercise that bruise.
Oh.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And which I think is more to what you're speaking to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I tend to, and maybe that's, the way my brain, whatever, wired for whatever reasons to just really to really hone in on the ER, right? Like just like for whatever reason, that's where my brain would go down the slide, like, oh, yeah,
Thanks for
let's look at
noticing.
this thing and let me rub my sore spot.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
it's
can't
not
see the
just you.
beauty.
It's
Yeah.
not just you. the human brain is hardwired to do that. And it's a self-preservation mechanism. So we go out into the world and we're like hyper vigilant for where is the threat. So when we're looking inward, we're looking quite carefully at what's not going well.
Right.
So that I can know where my weakness is, so that I can fix that, so that I can, and
Have that happen again.
right. And then, it's like, why am I perseverating on what's going wrong in my life? Because the brain is wired to make sure you're safe. Right. So if anything's off center, if anything isn't working right, we just latch onto it. There's a great yeah, I was going to talk about animals. Yeah, there you go, babe.
He
So
feels the love.
yes, she does. She's fun like that. But anyway, animals, for example, a very simple one, we are all walking around outside and doing whatever, but animals know when there's about to be a major storm or something like that. They sense that and they get to shelter. So like yesterday, I went out to feed my blue jays, and where were they? Well, it was about to rain. It was about to have a storm, whatever it was. I didn't sense that, but they did. So we're that whole focusing on the negative is self-preservation. Now, knowing that helps us to let go of it, because we have to remember that we are safe, and that you can have, so that's the dialectic of, I know there are things I want to work on, but otherwise I'm happy in my life.
I'm living the life I chose.
Yeah.
I'm living the life I chose.
Mm-hmm. And I'm continuing to choose to work on those areas where I'm off center. And that's okay. That's why non-judgment runs through all of this foundation of self-work. Not judging yourself for who you were in the past, not judging yourself for the thoughts that you have, all of that, and not judging others, that's hard. But, again, judgment itself is self-preservation. Where is the threat? Where is the threat? And then I can relax once I figure that out. But if we can say, yeah, this is something that isn't working for me, and I'm just going to do what I need to do to work on that, but focus too on the things that are beautiful, that are working well in my life, or things that are yet to come, as both of you pointed out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. Any questions about the class on Tuesday? Anything that needs clarification? Anything that came up, like, now that you've had some time to process it?
I just want to jump in. Nothing to clarify that I am aware of at the moment, but I want to bless the universe that sent you Lawrence, the poem, Ferlinghetti.
Mm-hmm.
That poem, I must have read it 20 times through, was it only yesterday? No, it was 2 days.
Tuesday.
Yeah. One of my things, just and about that perseveration about things, one of my things is I tend to sort of polarize all the parts. And I just so loved the way he said, just all the parts of switching back and forth of the, and I changed the congressional um, persons to political persons for use in Canada. We don't have a Congress, but
Right.
we have all of those people that he talked about. And I just thought it was so brilliant the way he snapped you back and forth from the high space to the low space, from the high space to the low space, over and over and over again. I will use that poem forever in my life.
Mhm. Beautiful. Yeah, I love it too. And I especially was so grateful that it came into my inbox that day. Like, what?
That day.
I know. And it just keeps happening. I just keep getting sent these things that have to do with our course. So that's why I'm not giving you guys the reading list yet, because stuff is still coming in.
Hooray.
I'm going to give you the reading list and the video list and the article list as at the end, so that you'll have them for future reference. I do want to acknowledge my Virgo nature has to do it. When I sent the poem out in the email, first of all, there were two typos, and I apologize. Ferlinghetti died not 3 years after he was born. It was 2021, not 19 or whatever I said, 29.
Oh,
I think I posted 1921. And also, the word is Tuesday, not Tuesday. So
I had
Just
looked him up before you even sent it.
good. But
And I,
I went through I read the whole thing, and then I was like, oh shit.
oh,
Always one.
every time.
Yeah, but anyway, just so that you're aware of the I got the dates wrong next to his name. So you'll fix that when you share it. So don't just copy and paste it, because I messed that up. Yeah, but anyway, to your point, really beautiful. And the back and forth of it is
Mhm.
exactly life and death meditation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's how we live. Like, death is right here, and life is still there too, you know, and keeping it close to us. Um, and most importantly, the underlying theme of this whole course is about you making it yours, your personal relationship with your mortality and death. That's why I'm saying this is not an academic class. You all can do that research on your own. What are death rights? Why is death a taboo? You know, you can do that. You don't need me to hold your hand through that. You're intelligent people. But what we want to do is personalize that experience,
Yeah.
and bring what death means to you, or mortality means to you, close, so that you can, yeah, so that you can, I wouldn't, maybe befriend is a strong word, but but
Make peace with.
yeah, um that that yeah, because as I said, I've been obsessed with death since I first found out what it was. And you know, the the relationship has changed obviously throughout the years, and losing my father when he was very young. He was 62 and I was 32, and that was just like, wow, you know, really devastating. But that's when everything, the lens kind of really got focused for me, about like, oh wow, you know, this is something I have to sit with more, rather than abstractly. I need to really start to sit with this, and write about it, and meditate on it more often. So I'll tell you a story, that is very much in keeping with that. So not shortly after, I would say about maybe 5 or so years after my father died, I was living in New York City, and I the backstory is that I broke my foot, and I was stuck in my house for 6 weeks. And I started watching Bollywood films to pass the time, and became obsessed, just absolutely obsessed. I have a list somewhere on my computer here. I got through 76 Bollywood films over the course of like a few years. But I had started really throwing myself into Bollywood. So during this time, I had a dream. And in the dream, it was a very brief dream. But I got hit by a car and I was dying. It was late at night. I was crossing the road. I got hit by a car and I was lying on the road, bleeding out, dying. And so I went, oh, geez, I better start doing my Buddhist chanting so that I'm prepared for the bardo that's coming. So I'm chanting and I'm chanting and I'm chanting. And all of a sudden, I don't know if you know Amir Khan, he's a famous Bollywood actor. He comes over and he looks down at me and he goes, what are you doing? You know? And I said, hi, nice to meet you. I'm dying. And so I'm chanting to prepare myself for death. And he looked at me like this and he goes, but you're alive now. Live. And I woke up.
Wow.
So
Woo.
when I had moments left in this life, and he's like, why the fuck are you preparing for that?
Spending your time right now, right, getting ready for you're alive now.
But you're alive
Yeah.
now. We just remember his face, like, what are you doing? You're
Oh,
alive,
that's
live.
so amazing. Oh
Wow.
my.
When I probably had moments left. So that's kind of what we're talking about here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, I had so not nearly as profound as that. Um, we watched recently, I can't remember, the one about the asteroid is flying toward Earth and Earth
Oh,
is going
don't
to
look up.
end. Don't Look Up. Yeah. Just this past spring when we were in Florida, James and I watched it together. And it's another one of those moments that you're talking about where it kind of like comes close to you. You don't really contemplate. You're just doing the mundane. You're running to keep ahead and living life and whatnot. And it's very rarely that you sit down and think about, oh, well, someday I'm going to die, or what if the world was going to end, right? And so it was really a deep exercise in that of, let's think about this for the next hour. And at the very, very end, you're saying, okay, well, if the world was about to end right now, and it's the exercise you took us through yesterday, like, who would I want to be with? What would I want to be doing? How, just like exactly what you're saying, in those moments, those minutes, those milliseconds that are remaining for you to take this last breath, what do you want that second to look like? You know, what do you want to be doing? Do you want to be by yourself? Do you want to be surrounded by family? Do you want to be having a glass of wine? Do you want to be snuggled with your dog? Like, I never stopped to think about that for that moment. And it has, over this last 6 months, that has really come back to me over and over and over again. Just how important family is, and connection, and those soul people that are connected to my heart. Like, that's nature. Those are the things that pop into my brain. Yeah. And so it's this really amazing experience of having those things kind of, it's like you said, that spotlight. It's
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden your gaze kind of zones in and you're like, oh wait, what is really important?
Right.
Oh gosh, those other
Mhm.
things aren't.
Yeah, exactly. And so what that brings to mind, so your final project for this course is it just gave me an idea actually. I had two options. You can either we're going to have my friend Maria is going to come, who's a end of life designer. She's going to help with practical stuff like creating your living will and all that. But she also does, she's Canadian and
Yeah,
she's
yay.
kind of awesome, love her. And she helps people prepare for their, practically prepare for the end of life. But she also does like forest bathing and things like that. She's very another one from the Tad Hargrave group.
Ah,
Yeah.
yay.
So anyway, so you have the option as your final project to either do your end of life designing thing plan, or you can design what you hope to be your memorial or life celebration. But what you're saying too is also, I think I'm going to throw that into the mix. Maybe trying to plan what you would like your final moments to be like. Um, Now, with that as a caveat, sometimes we don't get to make that decision. So we have to hold it all very lightly, right? So, like what Maria's going to help us with, that's practical, that's on paper, that's legal, whatever, and helpful, and that can be done. But and we can certainly hope if we have yeah, I mean, you could have a celebration of life before you're dead as well. Like if you're terminally ill or you know that you're on your way out and you want to have a party, people do that all the time. In fact, one of my friends just did that, and he's got bone cancer, and we don't. He's going to die, but we don't know when. So he and his whole family had a party. I wasn't able to make it, but I sent love, and he actually is the designer and creator of this ring that I wear all the time. So
Oh.
he's, yeah, so I keep him by me all the time. But anyway, so we can create that and have a celebration, and you can decide, do I want this to be while I'm still alive? Do I want this to be something that I will hand over to my executor or executrix to say, this is the celebration I want you to have after I'm gone? Um, and that's a beautiful practice to do. But we could also consider, how would I like my final moments to be? Who do I want around me? What do I want playing? Do I want to be indoors or outdoors? If possible. That one's trickier, you know? So there we do have some say, like when my father was dying, he was in the hospital and they said, you're not going to make it through the night. He said, well, I'm going home. So pack me up. And he lived in a cabin in the woods, like about an hour away from the hospital. So he got sent home to die, and he ended up living another 5 days. But he was able to have that. That's what he wanted, you know, and his kids were there, and he had the right people that he wanted around him. So that was good. But and I'm just telling you this story because it's kind of what we're talking about. He had a hospital bed in his cabin, and he asked my sisters and me to move the hospital bed with him in it so that he could see out the window, because there were deer out there, and he wanted to, because he couldn't be outside, he wanted to see out the window. Well, we couldn't get the damn thing to move. We tried, and it turned out to be, you know, darkly comic. But as he was chastising us, I won't use the word that he used, to the name he called us, but it made us laugh. He's like, "How did I come up with these three so and so's?" And so we weren't able to move his bed for him. But you know, we don't always get what we want, is what I'm trying to say. So we have to hold things lightly. But it is a beautiful thing to think about, right? I would like to be outdoors. I would like these people around me. I would like this music playing, right?
Well, and as you're saying all of that, and I mean, it's amazing. It's part of why I wanted to include mom in this, so it could be kind of like this open experience for the two of us. And I'm realizing there's kind of like there's two sides to that death experience, right? So there's my personal experience of exiting this world, but then there's also the people who are close to me who are left behind that are saying goodbye to me in my physical form, right? And so, you know, my grandma would always say, well, don't be bothered doing all of that because that's just a giant waste of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then
Oh,
I'm like, but hold on a minute. Like, I understand you don't want a funeral, but we're the ones who are going to be here
Mm-hmm.
grieving the loss of you. And so it's really important that we get to participate in some kind of ritual that walks us through that process. My dad just passed away and we had a service in May. And I realized like there's a reason the church did it. You walk here and you sit there and you say this now and you say that now. And then we all stand up and we all sing a song
Right.
because you know what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. And that soothing
Comforting.
experience of ritual,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. And so as you're talking through this arc, I'm saying, okay, yeah, there needs to be that piece around how I want to deal with the stuff that I can control, but then I also feel deeply committed to attending to the needs of whoever's left behind and what they're needing and consulting them in terms of what they want.
Right. So it can be a
Yeah,
collaborative thing. Yes,
experience.
and that's
Yeah,
the difference between um, you know, geez, I think about Mozart, right? Mozart was dumped in a pauper's grave and lime dumped on him, and that's it. Mozart, right? That is the opposite of what he deserved or whatever, for what he gave to humanity. Lack of ritual, lack of the ability to ceremonialize and honor the person, you know. So ritual is gives us um that framework, and we will be talking about this also in week 3. What is required for a ritual. There's a beginning, middle, and end. And you get to decide what that means. You can open a ritual with an invocation or with the calling in of the directions or calling on your god or spirits or whatever it is that you know what I'm saying. And then the bulk of it, what does it look like? So yes, having those, and then the closing, what does it look like to close? We do this with weddings. I was just at a wedding last weekend.
yeah,
you know um, there's a lot of room to play around, but there is almost always the same structure: the welcoming, the vows, the announcement, and the processional. You know, um, well, there's the processional first, and then and welcoming. So that's what's beautiful about this is, again, we're bringing it close to us and what we want. And some people are comfortable with not doing any of that and having it just be the way things have been done for hundreds of years. And that's fine too. That's whatever speaks to you. I think that's the important part. Mm-hmm. As long as you feel like you have a hand in it. Go ahead. Yeah. No, I wasn't sure if you want to.
oh,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, one thought I was talking about earlier when you were talking about your kind of like your first experience of death. Mom and I did the homework yesterday, kind of. She was over visiting and she was talking about her first experience of death, and my first experience. And so that was a really interesting exercise to walk through together. And again, then my uncle was here and my stepdad. And so it was like, these aren't conversations that you would normally get around to at a family gathering, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was interesting to hear my uncle sharing and yeah.
And it was interesting to hear that my brother had been present at my first experience. And as I had been writing it out the day before, I thought, I wonder if he had any emotion, any realization, any understanding of what was happening.
Mm.
And he was in the car when it happened, and nothing. I mean, at that, I mean, he's 5 years younger than I, so I was either 11, 10 or 11, and so he was either 5 or 6. So not surprising in a sense that he didn't have any memory, although it involved the death of a small animal by our doing. And
Automobile.
so I really thought he might have been aware, but not. So that was very interesting. And as Lorena said, it led from that to conversation amongst us. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a whole other level for the two of you to be able to share.
Yes.
your
Yeah.
experiences too. Um,
Yeah.
which
And it brings up like family stuff coming in, right? And so like then I get to hear about my great grandma and my grandpa and my
Mhm,
parents and my uncle's experience of having lost ancestors that I maybe would never have gotten kind of like those stories behind. So it just kind of
mhm.
like opens up this whole chapter of stuff to talk about that you just wouldn't.
Mm.
I mean, like who brings that up in a conversation? Oh, well, what's your first experience of death like over the
Yeah,
deviled eggs?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings to mind, Lorena, the last class of finding your purpose, and a big part of it being for you connecting with your family line
Hmm.
again,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
getting those stories,
Yeah.
being the story keeper, um,
Mhm.
gatherer
Mhm.
and keeper. Um,
Yeah.
so
Pulling all
what
those
what
threads
a
together. Yeah.
what a beautiful thing for you to invite your mom.
Yeah.
That's just, I was actually telling my mother about it. I
Yeah.
didn't use names. Last night I was speaking to her. I was like,
That's okay.
wow. I have a
Just so you
mother-daughter
know.
in my class. She just thought that was just delightful. So, but I
Mhm.
mean, this is such a beautiful thing for both of you. What an important thing
It
to
is.
do together.
Yeah.
Well, and and I don't know, we talked yesterday, you had thought you might bring it up, and we haven't much time left, but do we want to have a conversation about what connected us about our dreams? The crazy lady,
Oh,
when
the
the
past life
crazy
stuff.
lady
Yeah.
dreams?
Yeah. So it's so, and I don't know if we have time to get into this, and it's kind of like a
No, we probably
sideways
don't, but
segue. But so basically, what happened is I did a hypnosis just to kind of get to the root of different aspects of things about self-confidence, about self-esteem. The second one was about visibility, feeling comfortable with visibility. And
Yeah.
then the third one is around money blocks. But what happened was you're taken through this process and you're invited to look at an experience in childhood that may be related to fear of visibility. And so the memory that came to me was a very vivid memory of this. It was horrendous, it was awful, and it was not of this lifetime. And
Mm.
so, as I brought up last time, it just created a huge amount of confusion in terms of what, well, wait a minute, what actually do I believe about what's going to happen and what is happening? And as you pointed out on Tuesdays, it's like, none of us really do know.
Mhm.
Spoiler alert here.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of like I'm really looking forward to kind of understanding. And in that process of that letting go goodbyes, I realized I do believe that. So that I'm living in this world where partly I don't believe it, but I see that I do believe it because that's how I relate to the information. Um, and so it's like I just need some help wandering through what even is all this about.
Yeah, wandering through what specifically?
Past life understand, like, I mean, I know you can't sit there and say, well, yes, life's past lives are true, but I mean, it's like you're saying, I can collect the data, I can do the research. I guess what I'm saying from you is, as a trusted mentee mentor, um you being someone I deeply respect, what are your views? Like, how
Mhm.
do you relate to it? What's your sharing? My mother and I both have deeply somatic experiences of being locked up because we've said things that we weren't supposed to, right?
Yeah, and that was our connection through that. What ended up happening is she's telling me this, which I hadn't been aware of, and then I was able to go back to my early Queen days and say to her, so many of those early days I was uh struggling with being visible about my beliefs, and yet this deep terror. It didn't come from dreams. It just came from they're going to put you away if you say stuff you shouldn't say.
Yeah.
And when she told me her experience, I just dissolved because it was a whole new experience for me to think that, and I had forgotten it. I moved ahead of, forgotten, I mean, still there, but it was very strong for many, many years. I read so much, so many books about crazy ladies and all of those sorts of things, uh, as looking for information about how people navigated that kind of stuff. So yeah, that yeah.
Yeah, and again, such a great point about connecting and bringing all this back up. Yeah, so I mean, and actually, we're going to talk more in depth about this on Tuesday for the second
Brilliant.
week. But to the point of that theme, the theme of being persecuted for for speaking your truth. You know, I don't know if that means locked up in an institution or if that means sometimes, um, as my therapist, who is also psychic, said, you know, you, Rachel, you've literally had your head handed to you on a platter. You know, you've been through this a lot, and it was, for me, it was about doing healing work. You know, I've been a witch in many
Yes,
lifetimes.
yes,
You know,
yes,
and
yes.
so being able to use this life to overcome that fear.
Fear.
Right. So that's kind of, I think, what you're talking
Yeah.
about too, Lorena, is yeah, that'll come to you. Doing shamanic work as well. When you're doing deep, and this is how it came across for me, um, doing shamanic journeying to previous iterations. I call them iterations, not necessarily lifetimes, because,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. I might have been a daisy at some point, you know, maybe many times. I don't know. So I'm not sure about human reincarnation so much because I don't see, I'm not anthrocentric or whatever the word might be. I'm blanking right now. That I believe that all things are, you know, all energy is part of the divine. So, and we're going to talk about this on Tuesday. So for me, it was like, is is this going to be the lifetime where I deal with that fear? Maybe it is, maybe it is. You know, that's the work, right? So um we can take that experience, and so in the shamanic experience, I had terrible visions, very, you know, of many different ways that I had been killed, chased, had my child ripped from my arms, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, whoa. And I think it might have been the same kind of experience you had, Lorena, you know,
Awful. Yeah.
right? So,
And wasn't expecting it.
no,
Yeah.
you know, and so again, we look at that and like everything else, just holding it lightly, letting it depth charge, because you won't have the answers right away. But
Yeah.
much like Sharon, you were saying, you know, you kind of forgot about it, but you sat with it for a while. And maybe at that point, you learned what you needed to learn from it and were able to let it go and move on, you know, and that's what we do. You know, we bring it close and we just kind of hold it there instead of being freaked out about it or trying to make a grand sweeping life choice based on it. We can say, okay, well, this is part of the information. Existence is infinite, and if energy doesn't die, it just changes form, then yeah, there's a pretty good chance this is one of a gazillion times we have shown up in, you know, in the nature experiencing itself, like the Alan Watts quote
Yeah.
we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
what,
as
so your
what,
experience, what does that mean to you? That's what it is. It's like, what's
yeah,
that
well,
for you?
and what's so helpful about what you just said there and relating that back to mom brings me back to the full cycle, which is, so it would have been back when I was in New York, which would have been around 2006. And I remember Krista doing a past life regression with someone. And all I ever kind of remember, all that came up for me at that time was just walking through this set of woods. It felt like, medieval England, whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. That was really anticlimactic, not much of anything, very mundane. But what was interesting was, and I've heard you say this before, around stuff I'd been sharing, and I remember something so clearly you said was, you know, maybe you weren't ready for that at that time. Maybe if those things had unfolded in that way, you would have had a psychic
Mm.
break and you just would not have been even prepared or ready to experience what was going on in your life. And all of a sudden, as you're saying that, I'm realizing what I witnessed this spring in that hypnosis. If I had seen that back in 2008, I would have, there's no way I would have had the capacity to hold space for even understanding it or moving through it or processing it. And I see that again with what you're saying with mom, right? Like, okay, like sometimes you just have to stew for a bit and that's all you can do. You're not going to get that answer right now, and you're not going to be able to have the answer to that in your queendom until you're sitting with your daughter
That's
20 years from now
right, right.
with
Wow.
Rachel
Wow.
having a conversation.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's there's that saying, in the universe everything is on time. So
Yeah.
right. It comes when
You're
it
not going to
comes.
get that answer, and you're just going to have to wait for it.
Hmm. And again, you might get the thing, the element, but and that's why I say hold it lightly, tuck it in, sit with it.
Yeah.
You may not, and let it depth charge, let it compost is probably a better
Yeah.
metaphor. Let it compost until it's ready to fertilize
Yeah.
yourself.
And this may not make full sense for a really long time or ever.
Well,
Yeah.
and that is our mutual experience. It made sense to me in a small way in my earlier experience, but now it makes sense in a much, much larger, connected, universal way
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
for what's happened here.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Is
Yeah.
we think we got the answer, or at least to our satisfaction, and then we get to see a whole other facet, you know.
More and more and more
Hmm.
revealed.
Right. Now imagine returning to collective consciousness. You know what I
Ah,
mean?
yes.
And it's just like
Yes.
it's everything all at once. Scared my cat. It's everything all at once. You know, there was some, and we're going to talk about near death experiences, but this idea, briefly, but this idea that I forgot where I read it, some article about, being able to see many dimensions all at once, all the colors, all the sounds, all the beauty, the light, to the extent that, and you're one with it. It's not the I, it's you're one with that thing. And then the person who had had the near death experience came back and said that for a while, even a beautiful sunset was a letdown. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
so two-dimensional and like, oh, that's it. That's all you got in this realm. This fucking sucks, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
um, but we'll talk more about that. Um,
Yes.
well, I need to wind down for this session, but
Yes.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we will talk more about it on Tuesday. So bring all of that, and of course, the next coaching session. but we'll get into uh what it means to die and what happens after we die. And again, I will touch on a few theories, but I really want you guys to be able to as you hear them, be really checking in with yourself. What does it mean for you? And how do you want to personalize this? I will stress this a lot, so I'll be a broken record, but I think it's really important. It's very easy for us to get into the academic side of it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm going to learn about death, and then but if you keep it out here, then you're not making it yours. And then, the idea is when it is time for us to go, that's why we do this practice, is so that we're able to say, oh, okay, I know you, come on in. You know what I mean? And
We have the
let's
skill.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.